There is a type of person in this world whose calm is not ordinary. They don't react when they're insulted. They don't break when they're criticized. They don't defend themselves when someone tries to provoke them. They remain still quiet, composed, untouchable. Most people assume these individuals are suppressing their emotions or pretending to be strong. But the truth is far more disturbing. These people aren't avoiding anger. They've outgrown it. What makes them different is not a lack of feeling, but a level of psychological evolution that most humans never reach. They've undergone an inner shift so profound that the behavior of others no longer determines the state of their mind. Their inner world cannot be shaken by external storms. They don't take things personally, not because they don't care, but because they finally understand the real source of their triggers. Themselves. This discovery began with a single Kaisa man, whose lack of emotional reactivity confused everyone around him. His colleagues feared him without knowing why. His family was unsettled by his calm. Even his partner believed something was wrong with him because nothing seemed to upset him, not betrayal, not insults, not humiliation. But the truth was that nothing was wrong. In fact, something extraordinary had happened. He had crossed a psychological threshold that separates ordinary human reactivity from emotional mastery. He wasn't numb. He wasn't cold. He wasn't detached. He had simply learned to treat every emotional trigger as a mirror. Instead of reacting to people, he studied them. Instead of absorbing their words, he examined them. Instead of assuming attacks were personal, he asked himself one simple question. What is this showing me about myself? This shift changed everything. Because the moment you stop seeing triggers as weapons, they become windows revealing the parts of you that you've ignored, denied, or hidden. The angry coworker stops being a threat and becomes a mirror for your fear of inadequacy. The controlling friend stops being suffocating and becomes a mirror for your own desire for independence. The person who disrespects you stops being an enemy and becomes a mirror for your unhealed wounds. This man had mastered what can only be described as the mirror principle of emotional triggers. Every person who disturbs your peace reveals something you haven't yet made peace with inside yourself. When he was betrayed in business, an act that would destroy most people, he didn't seek revenge. He didn't collapse into bitterness. He didn't ask, why me? He asked, what part of me chose not to see this coming? What fear is being reflected back at me? What truth about myself is this betrayal forcing me to face? That one incident changed him permanently, because the moment he stopped blaming the world, he met the part of himself he'd been avoiding his entire life. From that moment on, something indescribable awakened in him, a type of psychological immunity most people never experience. He learned to look at human behavior without absorbing it. He could examine an insult without accepting it. He could witness aggression without matching it. He could watch chaos unfold around him without allowing it to enter him. This wasn't avoidance. This wasn't repression. This was evolution. People who reach this level operate from a different center of gravity. They don't respond from the ego. They respond from awareness. They no longer treat emotional triggers as attacks. They treat them as messages. Instead of asking, how dare they ask, what is this revealing? They have separated their identity from their emotions. They know the difference between a passing feeling and a defining truth. Most people mistake anger for strength, but true strength is the ability to stay conscious when your old self wants to react. True strength is being able to choose your response instead of being controlled by your impulses. True strength is the ability to look at a trigger and say, I will not collapse into the person I used to be. The people who never get angry aren't empty. They're full of awareness, full of clarity, full of understanding. They have learned to enter the gap between what happens and how they respond. In that gap, they choose. In that gap, they transform. In that gap, they reclaim their power. This gap, this pause, this moment of pure awareness is the birthplace of emotional freedom. It allows you to watch a trigger the way you watch a storm from behind a window. You can see the lightning, you can hear the thunder, but none of it touches you. You're observing, conscious, grounded, awake. Most people never reach this state because they live their entire lives in reaction mode. Someone's words hit them, and they immediately identify with the hurt. Someone's anger touches them, and they immediately mirror the aggression. Someone's opinion reaches them, and they immediately shape themselves around it. But those who evolve stop allowing external behavior to shape their internal world. They build a boundary inside their Minda psychological fortress where only truth is allowed in, and everything else is observed but not absorbed. This is what makes them untouchable. This is what makes them so calm. This is what makes them so intimidating. People sense their strength, but don't understand it, because you can't manipulate someone who doesn't react. You can't control someone who doesn't absorb. You can't provoke someone who sees your behavior as a reflection of your wounds, not their worth. This is only the beginning of the journey. The deeper layers are far more unsettling and far more liberating. Most people believe anger is automatic, that the moment someone disrespects you, you must feel hurt, that the moment someone challenges you, you must defend yourself, that the moment someone provokes you, you must react. But that belief is false. And the people who never get angry are proof that another level of human psychology exists. One where your reactions are no longer dictated by someone else's behavior. The truth is this: between every trigger and every reaction lies a small, invisible space. Inside that space lives your freedom. Inside that space lives your power. Inside that space, you decide who you are going to be. Most people never enter that space. They collapse instantly into reaction. But the emotionally untouchable have trained themselves to step into that gap, breathe inside it, and choose their response consciously. What looks like calm from the outside is actually awareness on the inside. They're not avoiding emotion, they're observing it. They're not suppressing anything, they're studying everything. This shift begins with something called the observer's mind. It is the ability to witness a trigger without becoming it, to hear an insult without identifying with it, to feel tension rise and choose not to follow it, to sense someone's chaos and refuse to swallow it. From this perspective, other people's behavior becomes information rather than injury. You start seeing people exactly as they are, not as threats, not as judges, not as enemies, just humans acting out their unhealed patterns. You notice their tone. You notice their insecurity. You notice their fear beneath their anger. And once you can see that, reacting becomes unnecessary. Their emotions do not enter you. They simply pass by. This observer's mind is what creates the reaction gap, the space where conscious choice replaces unconscious reaction. In this space, time slows down. You hear what they're saying, but the words hover instead of hitting. You feel the emotion rising in you, but you don't merge with it. You recognize the impulse to defend yourself, but you don't obey it. In that space, you decide, is this worth my peace? Is this who I want to be? Is this a sign of their truth or a sign of their wound? Most anger evaporates right there, but this is only one part of the transformation. The second part is far more powerful and far more difficult. It is the construction of what can be called the boundary fortress, an inner architecture that determines what is allowed to affect you and what is not. Ordinary people have no psychological boundaries. Their emotions are wide open. Anyone's anger can enter them. Anyone's opinion can shape them. Anyone's mood can infect them. Emotionally strong people don't operate like that. They create invisible boundaries around their inner world, walls that filter what gets in and what stays out. These boundaries aren't cold, they're conscious. The first boundary is the relevance filter. Emotionally strong people take in only what matters to their growth. Everything else is noticed, but not absorbed. A disrespectful comment, not relevant. Someone's projection, not relevant. Someone's frustration bleeding onto you, not relevant. Their inner world remains undisturbed because they don't allow meaningless noise to become meaningful influence. The second boundary is the ownership divide. They understand a simple truth. Your emotions are yours. Mine are mine. If someone is angry, it's their anger. If someone is stressed, it's their stress. If someone is insecure, that insecurity belongs to them, not you. This single distinction saves a lifetime of unnecessary suffering. The third boundary is the identity anchor. This is a deep internal clarity about who you are so strong that other people's opinions cannot shake it. Criticism becomes data, not self. You can listen without absorbing. You can adjust without collapsing. You can grow without feeling threatened. These three boundaries form the foundation of emotional immunity. And once they are in place, something unusual starts to happen. People begin testing you more. When you stop reacting, reactive people push harder. When you stop absorbing their chaos, they increase the chaos. When you stop validating their triggers, they try to provoke stronger ones. Why? Because your calm exposes their chaos. Your stillness threatens their instability. Your boundaries force them to face their own lack of boundaries. At first, they may become louder. Then, they may become confused. Eventually, they adjust because they can feel your psychological strength, and strength commands respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it. And then there is the most disturbing realization of all. People who never get angry don't avoid conflict. They outgrow it. They stop needing to be right because their identity no longer depends on winning. They stop seeking validation because their worth is self-given. They stop demanding apologies because their peace isn't contingent on someone else's guilt. They stop reacting to disrespect because respect from others is no longer a requirement for self-respect. Their power comes from this simple truth. No one can pull you into a war you refuse to fight. But this transformation leads to an unexpected side effect, a growing distance from those who still live in emotional chaos. You start to see the emotional world differently, more clearly, more calmly, but also more painfully, because once you understand the machinery behind human triggers, it becomes impossible to take anyone's behavior at face value again. And this is where the deepest shift begins. The moment when you stop seeing people's attacks as attacks and start seeing them as revelations of their wounds. It is here that emotional strength transforms into something far more powerful. There comes a point in this journey where something strange begins to happen. You stop seeing people's behavior the way you once did. An insult no longer feels like an insult. A criticism no longer feels personal. A provocation no longer feels threatening. Instead, every emotional attack becomes transparent. Like light passing through glass, you begin to see through people rather than at them. This isn't intuition. It's psychological X-ray vision and awareness, so sharp that you can instantly sense the wound behind someone's anger, the insecurity beneath someone's arrogance, the fear beneath someone's judgment. The moment someone lashes out at you, you can feel the real story behind their reaction, the unmet need, the unspoken fear, the unresolved pain. And once you can see that, something profound happens. You stop taking anything personally, because you finally understand. People are never reacting to you. They are reacting to the parts of themselves they refuse to face. When someone attacks your confidence, it's their insecurity crying for attention. When someone mocks your dreams, it's their own failure echoing in the background. When someone belittles your choices, it's their own regret trying to find relief. You become immune, not because you harden, but because you understand. And this understanding marks the beginning of emotional alchemy, the ability to turn every trigger into psychological gold. Most people run from their triggers. They avoid difficult people. They hide from uncomfortable truths. They shut down when they feel exposed. But the emotionally untouchable do the opposite. They walk toward the trigger, not impulsively, not recklessly, but consciously, because they know each trigger contains a hidden message about who they are becoming. A trigger stops being something that disturbs your peace and becomes something that expands your awareness. Instead of why is this happening to me, you start asking, what is this trying to teach me? What part of me is being shown right now? What strength is waiting to grow through this? You realize that every difficult person in your life is a mirror, and every mirror is an invitation to deepen your understanding of yourself. This is emotional alchemy, the transformation of reactivity into wisdom, of fear into clarity, of wounds into strength. But there is a shadow side to this mastery. Once you learn to read people so clearly, you may begin to feel detached from them. You see their pain so openly that their anger feels childish. Their spite feels transparent. Their drama feels unnecessary. It becomes harder to take anything seriously, because you can see the emotional engines turning beneath every interaction. And this is where many people get stuck in a cold, distant form of strength. They become unbothered, yes, but also unreachable. They protect themselves, but they disconnect from others. This is not the final stage. The last transformation is something far deeper, something fewer people reach. It is the emergence of the compassionate warrior. This stage begins when you realize that true strength isn't withdrawing from others' emotions, but standing firmly in yourself while being present with theirs. It's the ability to stay grounded while someone else is falling apart, to remain centered while someone else is projecting, to offer calm while someone else is drowning in chaos. You no longer avoid people's storms. You walk into them without being touched by them. Your calm becomes medicine. Your presence becomes grounding. Your clarity becomes safety. You don't lose yourself in others' emotions, and you don't abandon others to manage their pain alone. You know how to stay with people without absorbing them. You know how to care without caring. You know how to listen without inheriting their wounds. That is the highest form of emotional immunity, not separation, but connection without contamination. And this is where your power becomes undeniable. The world cannot manipulate someone who sees through everything. The world cannot destabilize someone who owns their triggers. The world cannot intimidate someone who understands that every attack is a mirror. The world cannot disturb someone whose inner state is not externally controlled. Your strength is no longer about what you reject, but about what you can embrace without being overpowered. This transformation leads to the most liberating truth. No one has the power to disturb your peace once you understand yourself. Every insult becomes information. Every criticism becomes clarity. Every confrontation becomes growth. Every trigger becomes an awakening. And that's when you realize the truth. Behind emotional immunity, you do not become untouchable by hardening. You become untouchable by understanding. You do not rise above others. You rise above your own unconscious reactions. You do not silence your emotions. You master them by listening to what they reveal. Your power was never in controlling others. Your power has always been in mastering yourself. The journey ends where it began, with a question only you can answer. Are you willing to stop reacting to the world and start listening to what the world reveals about you? Because the moment you choose that path, no one will ever disturb your peace again.